Good day, everyone, and welcome to the webinar for the 2021 Macy Faculty Scholars Program. I'm Peter Goodwin, Chief Operating Officer and Treasurer at the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation. The purpose of this webinar is to provide you an opportunity to hear from the principals involved with the Macy Faculty Scholars Program. Today, we will share with you the program's vision and highlights, as well as information about the application and selection process. Our agenda today is two parts. First, a brief presentation, followed by a question and answer period. At the end of the question and answer period, we will spend our last minute on some details you will need to know in order to submit your online application. Today's webinar is being recorded. You will be able to view the slides and listen to the presentation and the question and answer portion of the webinar on the Macy Foundation website within the next week. For any questions you have during today's presentation, please use the chat function on your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can at the end of the prepared remarks portion of the webinar. If you need technical assistance during the webinar, please contact ReadyTalk at 800-843-9166. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Dr. Holly Humphrey, President of the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation. Holly?
Thank you, Peter. And I'd like to welcome all of you to today's webinar, and I hope that many of you will consider applying for this important opportunity. So let me begin by sharing with you the program's vision, which you see depicted on your screen in front of you. So the vision of this program aims to recognize, develop, and nurture the careers of innovators and future leaders in medical and nursing education. We are specifically targeting this program for mid-career faculty, and when we say mid-career, we are specifically referring to your rank as a faculty member. As a mid-career faculty member, we're looking for those who have already shown great promise, and we would like to provide protected time, mentoring, and a national network of educators and leaders to further nurture and develop your careers. To do that, we are looking for scholars to create educational change at your own institutions and become part of this national cohort of leaders and innovators. Think of this as a career development award, such that interested candidates will have the maximum impact at this point in their career in order to keep a steep upward trajectory for future impact in your careers, both locally and nationally. So let me turn to some of the highlights of this program. As I've already mentioned, we are prepared to support 50% of protected time to pursue a project at your home institution. You will receive, as a scholar, mentoring from the program's National Advisory Committee. First-year scholars are required to enroll in the Harvard Macy Institute's programs for educators and health professions. We recognize that some of you may have already taken some of the courses at the Harvard Macy Institute. And in those cases, we invite you to consider other offerings through the Harvard Macy Institute. There is a course for educators that is held each year. One session happens in May, and one session happens in October. Each session is several days long, and the scholars are required to attend both sessions. Now, of course, over the past year, those sessions have been held virtually, and we are hopeful that in the future, some of those sessions may, in fact, be able to take place in person. But I just want you to know that the sessions went on, albeit in a virtual format. If you have already taken the course for health professions educators, then, as I mentioned, we encourage you to take one of the other courses offered by the Harvard Macy Institute. In the second year of this program, you are encouraged to enroll in one of those other courses sponsored by the Harvard Macy Institute. In addition to the courses at the Harvard Macy Institute, the Macy Foundation sponsors an annual meeting for all of our faculty scholars, both those currently receiving funding as well as the alumni. And as a Macy Foundation scholar, you are part of that network for life. So over the course of your career, you will be regularly invited to the annual meeting of the Macy Faculty Scholars. You also have access to all of the other offerings by the Macy Foundation that both scholars and non-scholars have access to, such as our grant programs that you can learn more about on our website. So let's turn our attention to the eligibility criteria. So in order to be eligible, to be supported and selected and then supported as a Macy Faculty Scholar, you must be a doctorally prepared faculty member at the sponsoring School of Medicine or Nursing. You must have served as a full-time faculty member for at least 5 years. Many of our successful applicants from prior years have had more than the 5 required years as a faculty member. You must be nominated by the dean of your medical or your nursing school. So each nursing school or each medical school can nominate only one candidate. A university that has both a medical school and a nursing school can nominate one candidate from each of those schools. A nursing or a medical school that has a first-year Macy Faculty Scholar is precluded from nominating a candidate during this year. So for the upcoming selection process in 2021, those schools who are precluded from nominating a candidate this year include the following, and I'll just list them for you so you can know right off the bat whether your school is one of those. So the University of Michigan Medical School, the University of Cincinnati College of Medicine, the Sidney Kimmel Medical College at Thomas Jefferson University, the University of Washington School of Nursing, and the University of Texas at Austin School of Nursing. Those are the 5 schools that are precluded from making a nominee in this next cycle. Now, each applicant must have identified a senior faculty member who will serve as their mentor and who will provide advice on the project as well as career development. You must have an educational innovation project with the appropriate institutional support. So the project should ideally address at least one of the Macy Foundation's priority areas, and I encourage you to study the information on our website in order to have a richer background of information about our priority areas, but for the purposes of this webinar, let me just briefly mention our three major priority areas, and they're the following. First, we aim to prepare future health professionals to navigate and address ethical dilemmas that arise when the principles of the health professions are in conflict with barriers imposed by the health delivery system. And so you will see that on our website as navigating ethical dilemmas. Another area that is a priority for us is the area of advancing equity, diversity, and belonging in clinical learning environments. And a final area of our focus is enhancing collaboration among health professionals, educators, and learners. And this is building on our prior investments in interprofessional education, and we're aiming to look for evidence of high-performing teams and evidence of collaboration in building and working on a high-performing team. And then finally, you must be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident to be eligible. Okay, let's turn to the application itself. We are looking for the application to include a statement of your career objectives and your personal goals for this program. We are looking for a description of the educational innovation project that you're eager to take on. Importantly, we are expecting to see a nominating letter from the dean of the school making the nomination. So that's either the dean of the School of Nursing or the dean of the School of Medicine. We are also looking for a letter of support from your mentor, and that letter should include a description of the characteristics that would make you a candidate as a future leader. We're also looking for the mentor to comment on their willingness and availability to commit to advising you as a candidate, both on your project and on your career development. And then finally, we're looking for the mentor to comment on how this award will be important for your career development. We are also looking for a letter of support from your department chair. And that letter should specifically comment on the chair's commitment to protecting your time to undertake this project and to commit to the time involved in participating in the Harvard Macy programs, as well as the orientation programming and annual meeting sponsored by the Macy Foundation. It's also very helpful when the department chair describes the role that you play in their department. We are also looking for additional letters from one or two other senior faculty members who are familiar with you and with your work. And so ideally, those letters should address your personal characteristics as a future leader and innovator, and a description of how this award will be important for your career development. If your project involves faculty or students from a different health profession or a different health profession school, then one of these two additional letters should be from a faculty member from that particular corresponding school. And then finally, we're looking for your current CV of both yourself and your mentor. Okay, so once we have the application, how do we make a selection of who is ultimately chosen as a Macy Faculty Scholar? The committee is specifically looking for evidence of a strong career commitment to education and for your promise as an educator and a leader. we're looking for evidence of innovation and creativity that has been a part of your career to date. We're looking for scholarship in education, specifically in peer-reviewed publications. We are looking for the merit of the educational innovation project that's being proposed, as well as the likelihood that that project will influence national trends in health professions education. Importantly, we are looking for evidence that the candidate that has strong institutional support for both you as a candidate and for your project. And then the committee tries to make an assessment of the likelihood that the candidate will become a national leader in health professions education. So let me say a word about the process itself beyond the criterion. The senior Macy staff will review all complete applications and will select the semifinalists. Our National Advisory Committee will then review the applications of the semifinalists, and they will be responsible for selecting the finalists. By the end of April of 2021, all applicants will be notified of their application status and whether or not they have been selected as a finalist. The National Advisory Committee and the Senior Macy Foundation staff will interview all finalists. Scholars will be notified of the decisions by June 25th, 2021, and the appointments will begin on September 1st, 2021. So let me just highlight a few of the key dates for this process. And the first is the deadline for the applications, and that deadline is, as you see in front of you, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on February 10th, 2021. As I already mentioned, by the end of April, and specifically no later than April 30th of 2021, you will be notified of your application status, and specifically the finalists will be identified by that point. Interviews for the finalists will take place on June 21st or June 24th. So each finalist will be expected to interview on one of those two dates, but not on both of those dates. And those interviews will be conducted by members of our National Advisory Committee and Senior Macy Foundation staff. And we have determined that those interviews will be taking place in June of 2021 by video conference. And that's obviously because of our ongoing pandemic. On June 25th, 2021, all finalists will be notified whether or not they have been selected, and the appointment for the newest cohort of scholars will begin on September 1st, as I already mentioned. So with that introduction, we are ready to take your questions, and I'd like to turn things back over to Peter, who will be putting the questions in front of us to do our very best to try to answer any questions that you may have. So Peter?
Thank you, Holly. As a reminder to those attending, please enter any questions you have about the Macy Faculty Scholars Program in the chat function on your screen, and we'll do our best to get to as many of them as is possible. I see that there are a number of folks that have already queried us. Many of them seem to be about eligibility-related questions, Holly. So let me start going through some of them, and I'll read them to you so you can respond. The first one has to do with what mid-career is and how you define that. So in terms of better understanding what mid-career means as a candidate for people who may be established but still have sufficient time remaining in their careers so that they can maximize the impact of the Macy Award. Do we have any guidance that we can offer with regard to age, chronological age that is, with regards to sort of the range of prior scholars that have been awarded this grant from the Macy Foundation?
We're really looking for those who are mid-career as defined in an academic sense. So you already know that to be eligible, you need to be on the faculty for at least 5 years. But most of the faculty I know who've been appointed as instructors or assistant professors are still very commonly at that rank as an assistant professor within that 5-year period. So mid-career more commonly will place someone at the rank of an associate professor. Now, that's not an absolute requirement. The 5 years on the faculty is a requirement. Associate professor rank is not a requirement. However, if I look at our entire applicant pool and judge their relative competitiveness again compared with one another, it is more commonly the case that a mid-career faculty member will be at the rank of an associate professor. So when we think of eligibility in terms of mid-career, we're really thinking of it in an academic sense, not in a chronological sense of one's age. So I hope that helps, but if not, please submit a follow-up question in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to it.
Holly, the next question is inquiring about whether or not the award could be shared with 2 individuals, a junior faculty member and a mid-career faculty member, so that they could complete the project jointly.
Well, let me just say that I love that idea because it brings out so many wonderful things about mentoring and working as part of a team. However, our program is currently structured such that the award must go to a single individual. So the Macy Foundation is not prepared to support 2 people sharing this award. However, we would certainly be very supportive of an institution that may want to take advantage of structuring institutional support such that there could be a Macy faculty scholar supported by the Macy Foundation working with a more junior colleague who might have institutional support or support from some other source outside of the Macy Foundation.
Great, thank you, Holly. For an applicant who may have recently transitioned from being research faculty to education faculty at the same institution, and their title is associate professor, but they've really just begun their career as an educator, would they be an attractive candidate for the program?
Thank you for that question. It's an excellent one, and you may be interested to know that we do see applicants such as yourself in our applicant pool each year. So yes, you are definitely an appropriate candidate to apply, but let me just point out some of the things we will be looking for. And those things specifically focus on your commitment to education, as well as your department and your institution's commitment to you. So it's not uncommon for someone to have started in a focused research career to migrate into more of a teaching, mentoring, and education career. And very often those individuals develop and grow into outstanding educators. But we would like to see some evidence of that commitment to education on your CV by way of publications or presentations or workshops. And then, as I already mentioned, we'd like to see some commitment from the institution about specific roles that they are looking to you to fill in the educational realm. What we do not want to see is someone who is going to focus on education as a default choice because research didn't work out, but that individual is mourning the loss of research and not really committed or even passionate about education. So we're looking for the inspired, passionate educational leader, and very often a research background provides ideal substrate to become that kind of person. To the extent that your CV can demonstrate commitment to education and your institution can underline that, you would be an ideal candidate.
Thank you. The next question, while I think you spoke to it during your formal remarks, Holly, it's probably worth underscoring. Is the eligibility of about 5 years as full-time faculty, does it have to be at the current school, or could it just be your total time as a full-time faculty, which might be at more than one school?
Yes, thank you for that question. It's an important one. When we say 5 years as a full-time faculty member, it can, in fact, be at more than one institution. So we're looking for experience in teaching, patient care, research, whatever it is, the roles that you've had at one or more institutions. We're looking for the 5 years of experience, but it can definitely be at more than one institution.
This question comes from someone who is a potential nursing candidate who wants to know if I work in a department of nursing that is housed in a health science school or some other health profession school, am I eligible? And I'll be happy to take this one, Holly, since it's pretty straightforward answer. Is yes, you are eligible.
Yeah.
I can do the easy ones.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Peter.
Holly, the next question has to do with letters of support, which you touched on. Do the letters that come from other senior faculty members need to be from faculty in the applicant's home department?
No, they do not. So it's very common that a successful applicant will have the additional letters of support coming from faculty who are collaborators on their project or who have a specific expertise in the area in which the project is being proposed, or they're a faculty member who has provided mentoring and guidance on some prior work from another department. So for those and likely many other reasons, your letters can come from any department as long as that individual has some connection to you personally or to your project.
We have a question regarding mentor. A potential applicant has identified a mentor who they believe would be ideal for them, but is located at another institution than where the candidate would be coming from. Can an applicant have a mentor from outside their institution?
Okay, this is an important question, and I'm going to inject my personal opinion and advice. So technically, you could have a mentor from outside your institution. However, my advice is that your primary mentor is ideally someone from your institution. And the reason I'm saying that is because we are looking really between the lines for institutional support. And institutional support is communicated to us in several ways, both through the letters and what is said in the letters, but also through signals that get sent with those letters. And a signal would certainly be sent if the primary mentor were not at the main institution. A signal would be sent about institutional commitment to you or to your project area. So my advice to you is to find a primary mentor at your local institution, but if that person who you're thinking about as a mentor from outside your institution is really important to you personally and or to your project, they would be ideal as one of the additional mentors as reflected in an additional letter of support. So it's not uncommon for us to see from time to time mentors who come from outside the institution, but it would be much more commonly the case that they would be faculty, additional faculty through the one or two additional letters of support, not as the primary mentor.
Thank you. This next question has to do with being a faculty member with an appointment in a College of Health Sciences. But this faculty member is interested in working with either a medical school or a nursing school and would get a nomination from the dean of one of those respective schools. Even though they're faculty at a College of Health Sciences within a broader university, would they be able to apply under the program's guidelines?
Yeah, Peter, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that one. I think it's a very technical question. You must be full-time faculty at a school of medicine or a school of nursing and be nominated by the dean of that school of medicine or school of nursing. So you have to have an appointment in one of those schools. The next question has to do with letters of support. The institution this person would potentially be applying from does not have a department chair. Could the letter come from the Associate Dean of Research, as the Dean of the institution would write another letter? And I think the answer to that question is yes, provided the Associate Dean of Research is the person who has the direct responsibility over you and your time as faculty. And Holly, you can add to that, please, if I was too short.
Yes, so I think most of the time I'm familiar with institutions being in some form of transition, and if there is not a department chair in place, there's usually somebody serving as an interim department chair. What we're looking for, whether that letter comes from an interim department chair or from an associate dean of research, is we're looking for that individual to commit to us that they're going to protect your time. And very often the person who has the most control over your time is the person to whom you're directly reporting. So the further we go up the hierarchy, it's almost as if the less control they have. So it really doesn't matter to us as much whether it's an interim department chair or an associate dean for research, but what we're going to need to be convinced of is that that person can guarantee that they're going to protect your time and not expect you to be working on your Macy Faculty Scholar Project during your vacation time, you know, on the weekends, attending our meetings by taking vacation days. We're looking for a real commitment to support 50% of your time. And as I said, very often that is best communicated by the department chair and not always as well communicated through the dean's office.
This question, Holly, is actually two questions in one. The first is whether or not the dean of the candidate's school, either medicine or nursing, could serve as the mentor for the candidate. Is that a possibility? Sort of question number one. Question number two has to do with whether or not there could be co-mentors if that was a consideration. So can you have more than one mentor if possible?
Yeah. Okay. That's another really important question. And I can just tell you, before I came to the Macy Foundation, I was a dean for medical education. And this is something that I remember struggling with from the other side of the table in terms of co-mentors and could the dean be a mentor. So here's what I think, and hopefully this will be helpful. So the first part of the question, yes, the dean can be a mentor. However, our National Advisory Committee, who will be making the selection of finalists and then ultimately of the scholars, will be somewhat skeptical of whether or not the dean really has the time to devote to mentoring both you as a individual faculty member as well as your project. Now, sometimes that makes a lot of sense because the project happens to be in the dean's area of expertise, and the dean and you as a faculty member have worked together for a long time on other projects, and so sometimes there's a very natural fit. But anytime the dean is proposed as a mentor, there's a little bit more skepticism about the issue related to time. So that then naturally leads to the second part of your question, which is, what about co-mentors? So once again, the answer to this question is yes. You may have co-mentors, and in fact, we each year do see applications that do have co-mentors. And when it works well, it works because the co-mentors have a very clear role in that they have an area of expertise that is completely aligned with the project that's being proposed, and or they have a history of working with the candidate on other projects, so it makes kind of a natural fit take place as we're reviewing the application. In addition, sometimes when a co-mentor is presented, it's an individual who has a body of expertise that the candidate needs for their project, but the candidate may not have any prior history of working with this individual. But in order to really make the project a success, this additional mentor is critical because of that specific area of expertise. So that would be a very natural reason for why someone would introduce a co-mentor. Now, the things to be cautious of if you're going to move forward with a proposal that involves co-mentors are the following. Number one, it needs to be really clear, why is that person a co-mentor, and is there anything to suggest that the reason is because the original mentor does not have enough time or enough commitment to you or enough overlapping areas of interest to serve as your primary mentor. Secondly, does a co-mentor really understand what their role is? And sometimes when we see a co-mentor as part of an application, it's clear that the individual knows very little about either you or your project. And so it's fine, as I've said and underlined, to have a co-mentor, but be sure that you don't fall victim to inviting someone to be a co-mentor who might have a flaw in one of those areas, knowing very little about you or your career aspirations or goals, or about the project that's being proposed.
Holly, let's stay on the mentor topic. In terms of the mentor,
okay.
How senior should they be? Do you think it's based on more important to be on academic rank, or that they have sort of significant substantive sort of domain expertise that the potential scholar does not?
Okay, so this is an excellent question. And the way our National Advisory Committee will review the primary mentor the reason that we ask for the CV of the primary mentor is because we want to be sure that they have established a track record for themselves that can be an asset to you as their mentee. So their rank or their position are less important than the track record that they have as somebody who can be an effective mentor for you. So what does that track record look like? Well, it needs to have evidence of at least two elements. And one element is that the mentor needs to have demonstrated that they have successfully navigated the hurdles of academic medicine. And that doesn't mean they have to be the dean of the institution or the president of the university, but that they have navigated for themselves some of the appropriate steps, whether that's through rank or areas of responsibility by position, some evidence that they have been able to be successful, because that's what we're looking for them, that's part of what we're looking for them to guide you with. Secondly, we're looking for that individual to either have access to a network of individuals who can help you with your project, or have the expertise that's necessary to successfully carry out your project, that they can be an effective mentor for you. So sometimes that mentoring role will be best fulfilled through a sponsorship function as a mentor, to introduce you to other colleagues and those with expertise, and to make sure that others within the institution give you access to what you need in terms of resources. Very often that mentor does have expertise in an area related to, let's say, quality and safety, or evaluation, or innovation itself. And then circling back, we are looking to see that they have the respect of the institution and have been able to be successful in clearing some of those hurdles.
We have a couple of questions that are trying to get at some of the numbers, Holly, around sort of applicants and semifinalists and the like. Can you discuss what the submission and acceptance rate is for the program? And then secondly, how many semifinalists versus finalists make it through the process?
Okay, I'm going to give you very broad ranges for that, to just give you some idea, because I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but I can tell you that in general, our applicant pool numbers in the 80 to 90 range of people who apply. Our semifinalists are in the range of in the 30s. And when we get to the level of finalists, we are generally aiming to interview about 10 people, sometimes a few more than 10 when we have multiple ties by our National Advisory Committee, and then ultimately we select 5 scholars. Peter, you've been at this program many years, longer than I have, and so if you'd like to add to that or revise anything I said, please feel free to do so. But as I said, that's my view from 30,000 feet.
Yes, I think your ranges are spot on over the past 10 years of the program. Holly, the next question has to do with publications. How important is it, or what weight is given to the scholarly publications in education in an application from a candidate?
Excellent question. And one reason I say that's an excellent question is it has not been uncommon in my experience to see individuals nominated by their institution who are clearly the kind of rock stars that I depended upon at my own institution for their important role in teaching and patient care. And sometimes those individuals are so busy being outstanding nurses or physicians and teachers of students or residents or graduate students that their publication record can be very thin. In fact, it's fair to say that when I started out in my career, busily taking care of patients and teaching and actually becoming a mother and having all those multiple competing priorities, I did not start off my career with a really strong record of publications. So when I see that kind of applicant, I personally relate to them both as an individual and as the president of the Macy Foundation, having served as a dean for medical education. However, with that preamble, I need to say that for this program, it is important that our National Advisory Committee see evidence of scholarship in education. Now, that does not mean you have to have a long record of scholarship, but you need to have some record of scholarship. And it is also important that there is some evidence of scholarship in education-related domains. So it's also not uncommon for us to see scholarship that comes from the specific discipline in which the candidate trained, whether that's orthopedic surgery or otolaryngology or pediatrics or psychiatry. But what we're looking for within those domains is evidence of teaching about that specialty area, or evaluating about that specialty area, or developing some innovative project for teaching and evaluation, or for taking care of patients, whether that's in the operating room or in the office-based setting or in the hospital. So it does not necessarily need to be consistent with having a PhD in that given area, but we need to see some track record that's already established in addition to your work as a nurse or as a physician and as a teacher.
That's great. We have a couple of questions related to projects, the project theme. First one, Holly, is do you have any suggestion in terms of the scale or the scope of the Educational Innovation Project?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I would say less is more here. And the reason I'm saying that is because our program, of course, supports you for 2 years. And I think our National Advisory Committee has a very good idea of what is possible in a 2-year time frame. And it's not uncommon for us to see projects that are so big that we know there's no way they can be accomplished in 2 years. And so what I would advise you to think about is your project in phases, and be willing to think about phase 1 as the phase in which you would be using your Macy faculty scholar appointment to develop a program or a project. And then go ahead and tell us what phase 2 and phase 3 might look like, or it's not uncommon during an interview for our National Advisory Committee to ask you, okay, if you're successful with what you're proposing, what would phase 2 or phase 3 look like? That is a better situation for you to be in than to have proposed something that's so grand that it becomes harder to see concretely what you can possibly accomplish in 2 years. Now, it's also the case that you may have already been working in this area. It's possible that you already have piloted a workshop or developed some pilot data. In fact, it's possible you've been working on the area that you're going to propose for a number of years. And if that's the case, by all means, you should be telling us about that you've been working on this for 2 or 3 years, you've presented national workshops, you've written about it, and now what you'd like to do is move to phase 2. Or now what you'd like to do is go in a new direction and the rationale for why you'd like to move in a new direction. So I would think about this really in the same way that you would think about a scholarly endeavor in both the specific aims for an individual project as well as the context for how that individual project fits into a bigger universe, a bigger landscape of why that project is important and what you hope you might do over the course of your career beyond the 2 years of the Macy Faculty Scholar Program.
The next question related to the project, Holly, is whether or not the project has to be totally new, or could it be something that has already been piloted and the candidate would like to learn how to scale that project and export it across the institution as well as nationally?
Yes, so that builds on the prior question, and I can tell you that we have seen successful scholars propose each of those ideas, meaning we have seen many successful scholars who have built on pilot work that they have already done over the course of 1 or 2 or 3 or more years. But we've also seen scholars who have been working in one area and they have decided to go in a brand new area. And either is fine as long as you have thought through carefully why you're making the change, if that's what you're proposing, or why you're choosing to build on what you've already done. So either one is entirely fine as long as you have a good rationale for doing it. We would love to hear about it.
Well, thank you. So Holly, we're approaching the hour, and we still have a number of questions, but we only have time for one more. So I will toss this one to you. Could you speak a little bit more about the Foundation's ethics priority and share any more thoughts on this particular theme for those people attending today?
Thank you for that question. I don't know whether you know this, but our priority area focused on navigating ethical dilemmas is actually a new area for the Macy Foundation, but it comes directly from my experience as a pulmonary critical care physician, a former program director, a dean for medical education, and I think directly from the era in which we find ourselves living, both with the unbelievable breakthroughs in science and our scientific understanding of disease, as well as this pandemic that we're living in and the many ethical dilemmas, whether those involve the allocation of scarce resources, whether that's ventilators or vaccines, or the end-of-life issues that we hear about every single day on the news. So if that's an area that you're interested in, and I hope that many of you are interested in that, I would suggest that you make sure that you put together a proposal and a mentoring team that is informed by disciplines that are complementary to medicine and nursing. And most commonly, those disciplines will include bioethicists, the social scientists, perhaps those from the humanities, but people who have spent their careers in areas complementary to medicine, because I think that will help you develop a successful project, but it will also bring the expertise to not only making the project successful, but to deepen our understanding as a profession about the issue that you choose to focus on. So I hope we'll see projects that are submitted in that domain, because as I mentioned, I think the issues are myriad and we have a lot of work to do in this area.
Thank you again, Holly, for answering all those questions. Just a final minute to cover a wrap-up portion of this webinar. So we are utilizing an online application for the Macy Faculty Scholars Program. And to access the online application, you have to first go to the Foundation's website, www.macyfoundation.org. And there you can click on the Macy Faculty Scholars tab in the navigation bar, and then go to the Apply page. Also, for your convenience, we're displaying now the URL. From here, you can click on the Start Your Application button, and it'll take you directly to the online application platform. So you can approach it in two ways, either directly through this URL or through our website. Now, to apply, you will need to register for an account in the online portal. You will also need to get the tax ID for your school as part of the registration process. And once you've registered and logged in, you can save your application and return to it as often as you like prior to submitting it to the Macy Foundation. Should you have any questions during the application process, you may email us at info@macyfoundation.org. However, before emailing us, we encourage you to view the frequently asked questions that are posted on our website at the URL on the slide. We will continue to update the frequently asked questions on our website throughout the open application period. The program brochure, which is another very helpful and detailed resource, is also available on our website at the URL on the slide. Lastly, as a reminder, by next week, a recording of this session, both the audio portion and the slides, will be available on the Foundation's website. Thank you all for attending and participating in today's webinar.